If you're working on your Volkswagen, especially some of the older models like the Mark III, Corrado, Mark IV, you're going to find that a lot of times you need to do some work to the connectors and terminals, whether it be corrosion on the inside on the terminal pins, cracked wire really close to the connector itself where you can't really get a good splice in because it's too close. You're gonna need to take these apart. Normally you could buy those kits online on, Amazon that have a few different terminal tools, but those don't really work so good. I like to make my own, and the thing I use to make it is the insert from a wiper blade. If you see this style wiper where it's got the jointed kind of things, you could look real close and you could see there's two metal strips. They go on each side, so you can take this apart and pull the strips out. And it's a really good metal. It's a nice chrome or zinc plated metal, and it's got good bendability. It holds a bend really good. You might recognize this if you watch The Lockpicking Lawyer. He makes what he calls the wiper tools, a tensioning tool, and he actually calls them a wiper tool because it's made from a wiper blade. So you put this in and you tension your lock and then you break into stuff. So basically I'm going to take this and I'll show you how to cut it up and grind it down so that it'll fit into, I'm using a Mark III. This is really the most connectors I use. You could also make a smaller one for like a Mark IV, Mark V, stuff like that. I'll show you how to get started with making one, and then you can use this trick to make all your others. So you don't really need very many tools for this. All you really need is a nice set of side cutters. I use lines and pliers. These are pretty heavy duty, so they make a nice cut. You'll see there's a little notch on the end. You want to start off by taking that off and getting a nice straight perpendicular cut. So we're going to take this and we're going to cut off two 2-inch sections. And they don't have to be exact. Now we have two pieces. They're both 2 inches in length. All you got to do is pretty much grind them down so that they can fit into, see, it's too wide to fit into the side right next to the terminal. So you're going to take a little bit off of one side of both of them so that they'll both have the factory edge on one side and then the other side will be sanded down. And you only got to go down about a 1/2 inch total depth this way, and that will get you in enough so you can release the pins. So let me set this up and I'll show you how I do that. So I have it set up sideways in my little tiny vise that's super handy. And basically I got just a little bit of it showing on the top, and I can make a mark right here showing how long it is, measure back, and these just got to be rough. They don't got to be exact measurements. 1/2 inch will do it. And that way when I put the next one in, I can do it the same way. And I'm going to use a die grind. Take a little bit off, nice and even across the top. And then you want to grab yourself a connector. Just make sure you can fit it in. So that feels all right. It's a little snug towards the bottom of where I was grinding it down, so just gonna take a little bit more off. It's okay if it's too narrow. You could actually use a narrower tool that'll fit in like a Mark IV. It'll work fine in these Mark III connectors, but I'm just gonna make this one fit a little bit better. Much nicer. Okay, now I'm gonna go ahead and see while it's out. I'll probably just use this too. And I'll just hit the edges a little bit to get rid of the roughness. And now I'll go ahead and make the other one. Now we have the two ground down. What we want to do is we want them together at the bottom, but then we want them to fork out and go back straight up. Same opposing, one going one way, one going the other, so it can fit around. I want to keep the factory side to the back and the cut side to this. 1 inch up is where we're going to start our bend outward, and it's going to be about a 1/4 inch bend, and then the remainder is going to be your tang. So the easiest way to do this, I have, these are like, you could do this with any needle nose, something like that. These are roughly a 1/4 inch. So I'm going to measure 1 inch up and sit this and bend one part one way, one part the other way. I'll take my little ruler and I'll Just scoot it until I'm at 1 inch. We want it to go, it's hard to show you the right angle. Okay, so here we go. We want it to go this way on one side, and then this way on the other side. And you might want to use your tool from before or something like that. Kind of get it in there and help you bend it. So here we got one, got a little bit of an S bend to it. And we're going to take our other one. So we're going to bend this one the opposite way. Let me get that one all set up. Now, like I said, you just want to make sure you're doing it with the factory edge. This one's going to go this way. So, see, we still have that matching edge on the same side. And that'll get us open more, kind of like a wishbone. And then okay. Now that should be good. Just test them together. Now let's take a terminal or connector. See if it fits in widthwise. That looks like it'll be good. Yep. There it goes in. Let me measure this. I usually eyeball it, but looking at, I guess it's about 1/8 inch. Okay, now for the handle. For the handle, I generally use a 1/2 inch piece of oak dowel. I've used it for a few different ones. Here's an older one that I made. You can see I trimmed this one down to fit in a Mark IV connector, which is why I'm making a new one for myself. It's held up great. I mean, I've had this thing for probably over 10 years now, and I've had no problems with it. So you drill a hole, you cut this to 4.5 inches, I believe. Yeah, around 4.5 inches of length. Gets a good grip to it. Nice diameter. 1/2 inch is the perfect diameter. Since I'm going to make a new one for myself, I went ahead and took some aluminum. I went and I just turned down the outside of it just to get it smooth, faced off the one side. Added some knurling, which is kind of like a magical science I didn't quite get right, but good enough. It's got excellent grip to it. And then I drilled roughly an 1/8 inch hole. You basically want to be able to stick both of them in there and have enough room for both of them to fit. So we're going to take this and we're going to do the same way we did it here, and we're just going to glue them in place. You could use JB Weld, or I'm going to put some epoxy in here. Got my cheap epoxy. I like to go to Dollar Tree, and you could buy for, well, it's $1.25 tree now. You could buy a 100-pack of popsicle sticks for $1.25. They're great for stirring paint, epoxy, stuff like that. Another tip, I save sour cream containers for keeping stuff in. I use them for storing small parts, but the lids are great for mixing up epoxy. And then really all you need to do is use these two pieces to scoop up the epoxy, put a little bit between the two. And just make sure they're opposing each other. Doesn't take a ton of epoxy. Just want to get it down in there. Could even do that to kind of force it in a little bit. And we're just gonna make sure they're set. They look good. They're both on the same plane. And that's it. We're just gonna set it upright and let it dry. I gave the epoxy some time to dry overnight. Now the tool is ready to use, and I'll show you how to remove a terminal from a connector. If you look inside, you can see on this one right here, there's some green on the end of the terminal. That's corrosion, so you're not going to get a good connection on that circuit. If you need replacement connectors or terminals themselves, you can go on my website at lucidautowerks.com. You can find a variety of different connector and terminal sets for Mark III, Mark IV, Corrado, Mark V, Audi. And if you look in the description, sometimes I like to put what they're for, say not just the part number. It'll also have if it's a coolant temp sensor or a fuel injector connector or a turn signal, just to make it a little easier to search for what you need. Take your tool and you're going to insert it into the top and bottom slots. And when the tool bottoms out, you should kind of hear it click. So it's clicked in, it's bottomed out on the plastic of the connector. Now I'm going to slip it out from the back. Now you have full access to clean your terminal with some fine grit sandpaper, emery cloth, something like that. Now, when you're using the tool, sometimes it pushes down on the little tangs, so you might need to take a razor blade and spread the tangs out just a little bit again before you insert it back into the connector. And to put it back in, you just want to keep the orientation the same way. If it's horizontal, keep it horizontal. If the connector has them vertical, keep them vertical. And then when you put it back in place, you're going to hear a little click again. And it's good to go. Like I said, you can find these connectors and terminals on my website, lucidautowerks.com. Give a like, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.